But anyways, are you guys ready? Let's start watching the Necrons deep dive by Wes Hammer in 3, 2, 1.
Of all the sentient species within the 40k universe, none of them are quite as mysterious or as complex as the Necrons. Now these are beings out of time, a species that should have been confined to the grave millions of years ago. They are a relic of a horrific time in the universe's history, where the entire galaxy was engulfed in the flames of war. Nowadays, the Necrons exist as a cautionary tale of what the quest for vengeance and immortality can bring. They are an absolutely ancient species, the oldest in the galaxy in fact, and in the time of flesh and blood nearly 60 million years ago, they waged an impossible war against godlike species known as the Old Ones. Now their hatred of them was so severe that they were willing to sacrifice their very souls to see their enemies eradicated. They made deals with terrifying eldritch gods and traded everything for immortality. The once proud yet frail Necron tier shed their living forms in exchange for the undying metal bodies we know today.
Okay, chat, hear me out. What if we bought like a Necron and we made him a kawaii Necron? What do you guys think? How can we make the Necrons kawaii? What if we put like a little bow on like their forehead? Do you think that would make them really cute? Do you think that would make them like really, really cute? Should I get a small thing of them when I'm in America? You know what? We're gonna do it. We're gonna get a really small thing of them in America. I don't think I'll buy a full army. I'll just buy the one. But we'll make a kawaii Necron.
And although originally betrayed and deceived by those very same gods, the Necrons would suffer no one above them and turned against their unholy masters, shattering and shackling them to their engines of war, turning their horrifying destructive abilities against those that would deny them as the masters of the physical universe. Now these monsters at one point had been successful in conquering nearly the entire galaxy. They saw all life as beneath them and preyed on the living, feeding them to their gods like livestock.
You know?
And then suddenly, they vanished. The unstoppable silver tide of death and horror that had enslaved gods and committed a million-year xenocide of unimaginable proportions disappeared without a trace, never to be seen again. Now, for millions of years, these stories were thought to be no more than a legend, a metaphor for the price of vengeance, or possibly even just a scary bedtime story that the Eldar would tell their children. But here in the 41st millennium, it has become apparent that these impossible tales were true, that the Necrons had returned, and they had come back to reclaim what was once theirs and eradicate all that stood in their way.
When the Necron tier shed flesh and left death for lesser creatures, we thought of only freedom from fear and making kingdoms that would never die. We did not think of what else immortality would entail. We thought in terms of wars and destruction and conquest. But eternity also requires what you would call entertainment.
To engage the Necrons in battle is to fight death itself. Their undying legions harness some of the most advanced technology the galaxy has ever seen. They are arrogant and soulless and see all organic life as beneath them. Now to stare into the glowing green eye sockets of the Necron is to see eons of hatred made manifest, to witness the rise and fall of countless empires, and to truly know the bitter price of hatred.
Okay, so would you say that Necrons are like generational haters? Cause damn, people made Hatsune Miku Necrons before Google it. Stop, really? Wait, that's funny. Wait, I kinda love it. Wait, I kinda love that. No, just one very long generation. No one hates better than the Necron, the inventors of racism. That's crazy. I kinda love that for them though. Like, go off king, like, holy shit. I love that.
You would see the futility of struggle. How do you kill something that can't die? How do you wage war against something that is so more advanced than you? Then the most powerful weapons you can bring to bear are no better than sticks and stones. And how do you prepare for a war that can come from any direction at any moment, even from beneath your own feet? And what do you do when you realize that everything you've ever thought to be true was a lie? That your pathetic view of the superiority of your species and your claim to the universe was built upon nothing more than ignorance and wishful thinking? What do you do when the world your people have called home for millions of years, the one that birthed your species and whose value cannot be quantified? What do you do when you realize your people are nothing more than an infestation, a squatter that's overstayed its welcome? And what do you do when its true owners return to evict you? So if you've ever read anything about the Necrons, you've probably heard that their planets are normally referred to as tomb worlds, but what exactly is a tomb world? So you can honestly think of a tomb world as basically a planet-sized crypt, an eternal resting place of the Necrons. Each contain deep labyrinthian underground structures that can house millions of them, each one locked away in stasis for millions of years. Although the Necrons are sealed away deep in stasis, the halls of these structures are actively patrolled by their canoptic constructs. They maintain and repair the crypts and keep everything in working order, eagerly awaiting the return of their dormant masters. So even though these structures are slumbering, they're maintained by incredibly complex AI systems that monitor the Necrons and keep the complex safe from intruders. These worlds these structures are confined to were once ruled by the Necrons during the War in Heaven. However, since these structures have lain dormant for around 60 million years, many of them have been colonized by new species. You would have no way of knowing that you're on a tomb world until it comes online and the Necrons try to remove you. The process of which a tomb world can become active are numerous. It could be the result of a simple timer going off, geological activity that damages the structure, or even its AI detecting intrusive life forms within the confines of its halls. Now, it's not uncommon for eccentric and hopeful individuals to end up digging too deep within the surface of their world, seeking to mine natural resources only to discover the ancient crypt of the Necrons. Now, obviously hindsight is 2020 here, but the correct thing to do would be fill that hole back up and pretend you never saw anything. However, the greed of sentient species knows no bounds, and the promise of ancient alien archaeotech is too tempting to be resisted. Now, this simple act of curiosity is often the catalyst that spells the doom of many a world. Now, however a tomb world ends up becoming active, when an awakening is triggered, it's basically the apocalypse. The complex begins to rise from beneath the surface. Massive earthquakes across the planet devastate the population. Oceans drain away and lava boils to the surface. Now, amidst the calamity of natural disasters, the immortal killing machines begin to claw their way to the surface, rising up within the very foundation of their intruders' defensible structures. Quite often, this actually resembles something out of an old zombie movie. Undead robots literally rising from their graves to eradicate the living.
That sounds
Swarms of
scary.
alien constructs blotting out the sun, and long-dead lords rising from their graves to take command of their legions once again. In deafening silence, they ordered the destruction of the living and a cleansing of the unclean from their sacred world. The weapons these creatures wield are unlike anything humanity has ever encountered. It is seemingly as advanced as it is ancient, mass-produced gauze weaponry that flays skin from the bone and can reduce the target to nothing more than atoms in mere moments.
Weaponry that does what now? Excuse me? Bro, this is like every horror movie where people try to like wake up the mummy, right? They're like, oh I am going to rob this tomb, and then you wake the mummy up and the mummy is like, I'm gonna curse you in like 10 generations, and then the people are like, oh shit, I fucked up. But also, what the hell? Okay, is this basically like the entirety of the Mechanicus game? Is this just like Mechanicus? Like, isn't this just the plot of Mechanicus? So, if it isn't the person who fell asleep. Okay, I can't help it if I fall asleep. Also, yes, I've seen the, I googled the Hatsune Miku Necrons. They're very cute. It looks like they have to be 3D printed though, unfortunately. No. Yeah, I've seen them. About looting a Necron. That's what I was thinking. Mechanicus is all about this, right? Okay. So basically, if I play Mechanicus, I'm just somebody with like sticky fingers then. Oh, just buy a 3D printer. Ah, yes, let me put that right next to my big old piggy bank. Disintegration beams as basic trooper weapons. Do they have stormtrooper accuracy then?
Even the lowliest of warriors is equipped with advanced targeting arrays that make them devastatingly accurate. Necron pilots are hardwired into their vehicles, their machines basically becoming an extension of themselves. And without organic bodies that are subject to the laws of physics, they're able to make absolutely impossible maneuvers that would kill a normal flesh and blood pilot. The majority of their soldiers are immortal, unthinking, literal killing machines that seek to purge all life from a world. The attacks come with no warning as the world's defenses are quickly overwhelmed. All organic life is atomized and the Necrons take no prisoners.
Why do I feel like... Do you know like when you grow up and you have to bring something to show and tell? This is my show and tell. Like, chat. My hyperfixation Warhammer 40,000. That's the one. Is this Earth's future when Skynet launches? You know, can I be real? Sometimes I do feel like I'm kind of glad that I'll probably be dead before, like, I don't know, robots take over the world, right? Do you remember like how they released an article where I think the title of it was something like women will be having more sex with robots than men in 2025? And it's like, where are the robots though? Where are they at? I don't know. You know what I mean? For the tribal chief? Like, where are the robots I don't even know. These aren't really robots. Yeah, I don't think they are they? I mean, I don't know. What are they? They're like I don't know, like hate fuel, like they're like generational haters. Holy shit. They are robots. It's over. I don't want robots to bang, chat. I'm just saying that like they made that prediction. It didn't happen, so I guess we're safe from like the robots taking over our universe for like I don't know, a few more good years, right? Like they still haven't made the fuckable robots. We're probably safe from like, you know, a robot invasion for like, I want to say like a good like 20-30 years, right? Therefore, it's okay. There's some, I don't even know what you're talking. They're actually making that shit. Why? But like, why though? But like, why though? 2025 isn't over yet. Chat, I feel like most of you are men, right? Are you guys being a little too happy about like women trying to fuck robots, chat? You should be like, oh yeah, 2025 not happening. Probably in like 10 years. The Deus Ex Machina level bots are probably 75 to 80 years off. Bro, you know what I'm curious about? How long do you think it take for us to actually reach like the cyberpunk level kind of world? You know? Like how long do you think it take for us to be like cyberpunk? You don't know my life? What? That's a crazy fucking statement. They exist, they just cost hundreds of thousands. Okay. Hear me out. We could have a fuckable robot boyfriend. Or that costs like thousands of dollars. Or we could date a man that's almost free of charge. AI could never replace me because we went from watching a video about like a very serious like robot species where they're fueled by like racism and hate. We've gone from watching a video about that to like, can I fuck a robot? AI could never replace me. I don't know how we got on this tangent, but we're here. Oh my god. Okay. You want to know something? A friend of mine, she went to like a guy's house for like a hookup, right? And in the corner of his room, he had a doll. Like, it looked real, like, it was one of the nice, she was telling us it was one of the nice ones because it looked really nice. Like, it looked really, really, like, expensive nice. Not like one of the really, like, plasticky looking ones, right? And it was just sitting in the corner of his room. Like, it was in the fucking cock chair. Like, it was in the fucking cock chair. It was, we asked her, we were like, did you end up doing it anyways? And she was like, well, yeah. And we were like, why? Was it Tifa one? I have no, she's not an anime girl. Like, she's not like one of those, like, she doesn't really like watch anime or play video games. She's like a normie. But like, we were like, why? Yeah, he left it out. It's kind of insane. It was very, I don't know, we were hearing about it. Apparently everything else about this guy was very normal. It's just that he did that, and she was like, oh, do you think I should see him again? And we were like, if he's a nice guy? Question mark? We were like, I mean, she said that he was a nice guy. So we were like, maybe I don't know. Like, what do you guys think, chat? What do you guys think? What do you guys think? So she said he was very normal. Everything about the date was very nice. Up until the only weird thing was that he had that in the corner of his room just left out. Should she still see him? It's just very silly. No, I mean, I think she is planning on seeing him again. For the most part, hopefully nothing else is weird. Hopefully nothing else about him is weird. You know? Hopefully things are okay with him, because she said that they really clicked. They really vibed very well. Wait. Okay, chat, if you move in with if a guy moves in with you and he brings his like sex doll with him, would that be okay? Or would you be like, oh no, he needs to get rid of that shit? We went on like the wildest tangent, but that's only because I don't even remember. Was the question, are Necrons like fuckable? I don't think they are, but you know, it'd be weird, right? Okay. That would be kind of funny, right? Sharing is caring. Is that really how that works? I don't know. It's a competition, girl. As long as it's not in plain sight. I don't know. Could we realistically fit it under the bed? Could he realistically fit it under the bed though? Does she keep her toys? No, she doesn't have any because she's just not that kind of girl. Like, she's kind of like a party girl, if that makes sense. Like she likes partying, right? We went from AI robots to I know, it's kind of insane. I don't know how we got on this tangent, so hey. Necrons lack the assets, so no. Okay, but like, could they not just like put those assets on them? Wait, are you not essentially also like fucking a toaster if you would the Necron? Oh my god. Are we just Adeptus Mechanicus? Chazin is a bratty femboy. Stop. What? No. Wait. Huh? No, we can't call him that. What the fuck? Admech is... You know? The tangent has gone so far off that it's kind of crazy now. I kind of love how like we've gone to like, oh yeah, chat, would we fuck a Necron? The answer, maybe. He seems like he's got a nice personality, right? So he seems like he's a nice guy. So you know, sure, why not? Am I right, guys? Chazin is very possessive though. True. What if he turns you into like a... What if he turns you into like a... What are those things called? He freezes you and puts you in his collection. Oh my god, what if he takes us out only... What if he takes you out only to like get it on? What if you become the sex doll? We'll drop the tangent, let's keep it going. 3, 2, 1.
If a species is fast enough to get a distress beacon out, the world their allies come to defend will look radically different. The architecture of the previous owners has been left in ruins, and all that remains of organic life is but dust in the wind. Instead, they find colossal monolithic structures of ancient alien design, architecture that hasn't seen the light of a sun in 60 million years.
Can I just say, I think that they're very cute. Like these structures, they're very short looking. They're like really like short looking pyramids, and I think they're so cute.
They are met with unbelievable resistance from a newly embedded ruler. Now, what makes the Necrons particularly dangerous is the fact that they're all basically immortal. Each one is comprised of a living metal substance known as the necrodermis. Their bodies can repair themselves from all but the most catastrophic of damage.
Ooh.
Now, if the damage is too great to be repaired in the fight itself, they can also utilize a phasing technology. This teleports the wounded or crippled individual and all of their equipment out of the battle and back to the safety of their tomb world. Their ability to heal themselves is known as the resurrection protocols, and this allows them to take enormous amounts of punishment and heal from practically any injury.
They're kind of
This makes them incredibly difficult to destroy or even capture. We have no way of studying them or their technology. We only have first-hand accounts of the worlds they have purged, data logs and vox transcripts from the moments of annihilation, a warning in the darkness of what is to come. And here's the thing about the Necrons. They're a particularly arrogant species. They see no difference between the forces of humanity, the slaves to chaos, or the various alien races that inhabit the galaxy. All are vermin and must be purged. The galaxy once belonged to the Necrons, and they've come back to reclaim it. Their conquest of eradication will never end so long as the living still draw breath within their kingdom. Now,
so they're not just... They're not like racist. They just fucking hate everyone then. I see.
Now, depending on when you started reading about the Necrons, their lore has actually undergone a couple of different iterations over the years. Now, the old lore basically portrayed the Necrons as an unstoppable tide of robot zombies, Terminators that would appear without warning and purge all life from a planet. There was no reasoning with them, no communication, and they were beyond mysterious. We knew practically nothing about them. And that was honestly kind of part of their charm. They were meant to be this super mysterious and horrifying entity, an archetype of terror. They existed to demonstrate just how brutal and unforgiving the galaxy truly was. That for all of our understanding and all of our knowledge, there were things in this universe we couldn't even begin to comprehend. That our persistence was ultimately futile, and the superiority of mankind nothing but a myth. However, more recent lore, for lack of better words, has actually kind of fleshed them out quite a bit, giving the Necrons a voice, and ourselves a deeper insight into what they used to be and what they have become. Now, it was once believed that all Necrons lacked any form of consciousness. However, we know now that basically the more important a Necron was in life, the more sentience they maintain in their current form. This means that Necron nobles are incredibly intelligent and fully capable of communication, and have their personalities intact.
So Trazyn is basically a noble then, because he knows his shit. Huh. Okay.
Their minds are unburdened from the limitations of flesh. They are able to process information much quicker than a normal human, and have various neural programs that enhance their minds even further. Now, one such cognitive upgrade is known as subminds. A Necron lord who has been upgraded with such a thing basically has multiple brains. These are often reflections of their own mind, but hyper-specialized in certain areas. Now, in the novel The Twice Dead King, the main character Oltex is equipped with multiple subminds, each a copy of his own, yet completely dedicated to one specific aspect of his personality and knowledge. In this way, he's able to have full and complete dialogues with himself, in order to come up with the best possible path of action for any given situation. Of his multiple subminds, one is dedicated to war and combat, another to politics, and another is completely dedicated to xenology. So in a sense, no matter where he goes, he has a team of trained scholars inside his head to help him make decisions. And speaking of which, let's speak a bit more on Necron dynasties and their nobility.
Bro, really, Sit? Fuck everyone, I'm gonna do this myself. Holy shit, I kind of love that though. Like, I actually kind of love that for him. He girl bossed. He girl bossed and he said, everyone, I'm just gonna do it myself.
Now, there are many great Necron dynasties, each led by a different ruling class. They all have different wants, desires, and plans, and it's actually really interesting to see them bicker and squabble amongst themselves. Now, despite their background, all Necrons are a proud people, heavily inspired by the ancient Egyptian culture of Earth. Now, despite their superhuman levels of intellect, not all of the Necrons made it through the deep sleep with their minds completely intact. It is said that a great madness has infected the Necron people, and many of them have had their minds kind of deteriorated over the years. Now, what that means is unique to the individual, but it's not uncommon for a once benevolent lord to become paranoid and hyper-aggressive when he reawakens. Now, when it comes to communication, Necrons are fully capable of speech, but there's no real reason to do this other than out of tradition. Now, most of the time, they are basically communicating through a form of binary, which in addition uses a series of glyphs represented on their bodies. Now, these glyphs give further emphasis to emotion, and you can basically think of them like a high form of emoji. These can represent happiness, sadness, anger, futility, anything you can think of. Now,
so you're saying that those are just basically Necron smiley faces? I kind of love this for them. What? They're just superpowered dementia patients at this point? That's insane. That is so funny. That is actually crazy. Necron emoji is crazy, but honestly, if you break it down like that, I understand. I kind of love that, and I do understand what Necron emoji means. The Necron emojis. It'd be me, the crying emoji forever if I were a Necron, just all the time. Is there a Necron uwu and owo chat? That is the important question of the day. That's because the Silent King giving them independence back allows for all kinds of political infighting and assassinations. How do you communicate in like smiley faces and like uwus? What's the Necron eggplant? That's crazy! That is crazy! Oh my god. But no, I do appreciate when like content creators like kind of dumb it down a little bit and use terms that are like understandable, because it's like, oh yeah, this is how they talk. I would have been like, oh, it's like hieroglyphics then. But no, he's like, these are Necron emojis. Oh, I get it now. Understandable. Have a nice day.
Likewise, their ships are often completely uninhabitable by organic life, as the Necrons have no need for air. They are literally floating tombs inhabited only by the dead. Of all the things the Necrons are known for, their technology and superior weaponry are probably their #1 claim to fame. So let's talk a bit more about their weapons. Of all the weaponry utilized by the Necrons, none is more iconic or commonplace than that of Gauss technology. Now, Gauss weapons come in many different forms, but all of them work by projecting a beam of energy that disrupts and disassembles matter at the molecular level. In a practical sense, this technology can be used by constructs such as scarabs to disassemble matter into its core components, and then use those to reconstruct into something new. Breaking down rocks to then use those molecules to create something more useful, like a bridge or a fortress, for example.
That's kind of cool
when
though,
utilized
what?
as a weapon, the gauze beam creates a devastating effect on living flesh. It basically breaks down the impact site and turns the target into dust. The effects of the beam go layer by layer on the target, tearing them apart piece by piece. Now, needless to say, this is a pretty horrific way to go, and the gauze weaponry is rightfully feared. These weapons can take the form of mass-produced gauze rifles to the massive gauze flux arrays, the larger of which can tear apart hordes of infantry in mere moments. Now, another common form of Necron weaponry is known as Tesla weapons. Now, these firearms fire arcing bolts of lightning that can bounce from target to target, increasing in strength every time they jump. Now, if they're allowed to jump too quickly, these arcs can become powerful enough to crack concrete. Now, although an interesting fact about them, these weapons are normally used more for engaging with a lot of lightly armored foes, whereas the gauze weaponry is much better against highly armored targets. Now, particle weapons are completely different from the first two. Whereas gauze weaponry disrupts matter and causes it to break apart, a particle weapon basically energizes atoms and causes them to violently be repelled from one another, the target literally tearing itself apart. Now, this can render human soldiers into piles of goo or cause tanks to collapse in on themselves, as the atoms that held them together are ripped in every direction. And finally, let's talk about the big guns. Now, these are known as doomsday weapons.
I want to say something, but you guys might get mad at me for it. I kind of love this because it looks like a croissant. I think that's how you say it, right? Because like I grew up saying croissant. I like this very much. It looks like a croissant, and I love it. I want one. I want one. It's very cute. How do you say it? Cause I learned it I learned like how to say it in like, you know, in like Japanese. I don't actually know how to say like the English word for it. So it's like croissant. Right? It's just a little guy sitting in the middle of a croissant, and I love it. It's very cute. What if I bought one and I just painted it like a croissant color with like a little bit of like pink or purple like sprinkles on top of it, like icing? Isn't it like kind of fire? I mean, why? I don't know why there's a random fucking dude in my breakfast, but hey, there's no bone, he's metal. I want to do that, guys. I'm sorry. I feel like this is a very serious like hobby for a ton of people, and they like to make their stuff look really fucking nice. And then you have me, and I'm like, I'm gonna buy this just so I can paint it so it looks like a croissant. Make a redeem? Why? I know I'm saying it wrong, but like, oh man. You did a red one? I like it. I like it so much though. I honestly do. I think it's very cute. I think it's very funny. Yeah, it's like, I do kind of feel bad because I know everyone takes this hobby like very seriously. Like they do like really nice, like you guys paint your models like really nice. Like it looks like accurate. Like, you know, it looks like your bros have been in battle. You know, they've got their arms cut off and stuff like that. They look like they're actually there, you know, for war. And then you have me, and I'm like, I'm gonna put a bow on this guy. I'm gonna make this look like a strawberry icing croissant. What if we made like a really like tiny baby like apron for him, and we just like put like a little like, and we just like hot glued like a baker's, like a little like baking hat, on those like baker's hat, and we put like a little apron on him, and then he's just gonna be like a little baker piloting the croissant cannon. It's not my fault that this straight up looks like a delicious breakfast pastry, okay?
They are massive hulking death machines that have to be mounted on a stable weapons platform, as they are far too large to be wielded by infantry. Now, they use a massive stream of plasma that is focused and projected through a targeting crystal, which unleashes a hellish beam of devastating light that eradicates everything in its path. Now, the prey these are used against are far larger and more dangerous than any infantry. Now, some of them are capable of obliterating even the largest of war machines, tearing out the heart of an Imperial Titan in a single shot. And in order to not bog this video down by listing literally every type of Necron weapon ever documented, I'll make a point to mention the most devastating creation in the entire galaxy. Now, it is known as the Celestial Orrery, and it's basically a giant holographic map of the Milky Way. Now, every star, every solar system, every sector is illuminated within it in precise detail. Now, traditionally this thing is used more like a scrying device, as having a map of everything that updates practically in real time is an unbelievably valuable tool. However, the Celestial Orrery harbors a much darker function, in that the user can literally select stars within the map and basically tap them out of existence. Now, if the user was so inclined,
what?
he could cause any star in the galaxy to supernova, unleashing destruction on a cosmic scale never before seen. Now, how such a creation works is a complete mystery, and because this thing is a creation of sheer horrific magnificence, the entire Orskar dynasty is sworn to its protection.
Okay.
And although many other dynasties or even forces outside of the Necrons would love to get their hands on this thing, the Orskar dynasty will eternally defend it with their lives. Seeking counsel with the Celestial Ori is not something that's out of the question, it's just very difficult to do. Now, in the novel The Infinite and the Divine, Trazyn was able to use this thing to locate a particular device of interest to him. However, let's just say that the meeting did not go well and he's definitely banned from ever using it again. Now, the reason I bring this thing up is to elaborate on something of critical importance, for you to understand just how powerful the Necrons once were. You see, the War in Heaven was an event 60 million years ago that saw the entire galaxy engulfed in war.
Okay.
Every conflict we see in the 41st millennium supposedly pales in comparison to just how horrific this time period was. The Necrons had created weapons capable of killing gods, and after the war had ended, the Silent King ordered the destruction of all of them, seeing no reason for such terrifying weaponry to exist, as the cost to the universe would be too great if they ever fell into the wrong hands.
That's kind
The
of fair,
Celestial
though.
Orrery was allowed to remain functional. So if this thing got the pass, we can only begin to imagine just how insane the other weapons must have been. Now, despite what we normally see in artwork and on the tabletop game, the reality is that most battles take place in the void of space. So let's take a moment to talk some more about their ships. So much like everything about the Necrons, the ships they use are incredibly advanced. So much so that their technology seems to be more akin to arcane magic than actual science. Now,
Are you guys ready? They're talking about the ships, chat. Are you ready? Brace yourselves, chat. You know what's gonna happen. I know what's gonna happen. Are you ready for this shit? I'm not ready. Let's go.
what we know about them is shockingly very little, but we do know that they utilize two main types of systems to achieve faster than light travel. The first is what is known as an inertialess drive, meaning that somehow they have managed to break the laws of physics and their ships create no inertia, meaning that in a vacuum of space, they are able to move incredibly quickly, possibly on par if not faster than those who utilize the warp to travel. Now, it goes without saying that utilizing something like this is obviously incredibly efficient and practical, as warp travel is insanely dangerous. Now, the second thing they use is a system of portals known as Dolem gates. You see, these things allow the Necrons to infiltrate the webway, which is basically like a network of tunnels that spreads across the known galaxy.
So they
exist as
have
basically a
webways.
pocket dimension between the warp and real space, and are traditionally used only by the Eldar, as anyone who is able to infiltrate them would quickly get lost within their vast labyrinthian network of tunnels. Now, the Dolem gates haven't been mentioned in a long time, so it's unclear if the Necrons still utilize them. Now,
There's 4 croissants! There's 4 of them! I'm not gonna lie, I don't think I get this one because it seems really fucking bulky and big. And I don't know if there's even a model for this, but this shit looks really bulky, it looks really big, it looks like it take up way too much space. I don't think I'll ever... Hi besties, it's me, Miwa. And if you're enjoying today's video, please consider subscribing, okay? Like, please, 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 times a billion. I'm like, really asking this of you, ne? I don't know if I like this one that much. But there's 4 of them! I mean, it's like 8 if you count the little baby ones on top, but...
Now, even though in the 41st millennium, the webway is currently mastered by the Eldari, it didn't always used to be that way. You see, it was originally created by the Old Ones, the ancient enemy of the Necrons, and who they fought during the War in Heaven. And before the Necrons found a way to infiltrate it, they were constantly outmaneuvered by the Old Ones. It was the creation of the Dolem gates that quickly swung the war in the Necrons' favor. But I'm getting ahead of myself, and we'll talk about the War in Heaven in a little bit.
Okay.
Now, what's really interesting about their ships is that they have something of an Achilles heel. You see, their technology is unbelievably ridiculous, and it can actually prove to be ineffective against the barbaric and primitive technology utilized by the Imperium of Man. In the Twice Dead King, there is a group of Necrons that are fleeing from the Imperium. The torpedoes that mankind utilizes are seen as unbelievably primitive. The Necrons scoffing that the brutish and uncivilized race of man still fires physical projectiles at their enemies. This is seen as incredibly uncouth and boorish.
Okay.
That being said, the shielding their ships use were created to deflect blows from god weapons, energy-based weaponry that could shatter stars. They were not designed to protect against the spacefaring equivalent of throwing rocks at your enemy. Now, without getting into spoilers, this makes the human pursuers in the story incredibly dangerous to the Necrons.
I'm not gonna lie, that is so dumb. That is really, really, really dumb. I guess, but also, holy shit. Like, well, I guess they tech so hard, they tech too hard into the sun, and now they're getting their ass beat by like fucking rocks. It's kind of funny. It's so crazy. I do actually like that there are dumb plot points where it's like, I can appreciate like the irony in it, right? I know like, okay. I know that it's meant to be ironic, right? I'm not salty that they're outgunned. I just think it's so fucking funny that like a lot of like, I feel like a lot of moments in Warhammer that I've learned so far are just like people overthinking and then common sense just like winning in the end, you know? I just think it's very funny. It's just insanely funny that it's like, oh yeah, you know, I've done this so I can protect myself against a higher power, but I'm gonna go fight someone who's of a lower power, and it's like, oh, but you know, I'm just gonna throw a rock at you, shit. You know? It's kind of funny. I appreciate the irony in it. I do. I really do.
So let's talk a little bit more about how Necron society is structured. Now, when it comes to the Necron hierarchy, each of the tomb worlds is ruled by a singular individual that controls a vast court of nobles. Now, smaller tomb worlds may be ruled by a lord or an overlord, whereas larger ones may be governed by what is known as a pharaon.
Okay.
There are hundreds of Necron dynasties, some splinters of much larger ones, but all with varying cultures and power levels. And the largest of which is known as the Sautek dynasty. Now, the Sautek dynasty is possibly the most well-known of all Necron dynasties. They have claimed hundreds of worlds since their time of awakening, with more and more of their aligned tomb worlds coming online every day. Now, the Sautek dynasty is so large and powerful that it dwarfs all others by comparison. Ruled over by Imhotep the Stormlord, the Sautek dynasty is rigorously militaristic in nature, limiting its conquest to not just that of lesser races, but also those of rival dynasties. They seek to assimilate all Necrons under one banner. The Sautek dynasty wishes to reunite the Necron people once again, and if this must be done through military conquest, then so be it. Now, many lords will bend the knee to Imhotep's might before any blows are struck, often being highly praised and rewarded for doing so. Being folded into the ranks of the Sautek is deemed an honorable path to take, as the wise ruler's pride was less important than the good of his people. This is possibly the best outcome such an individual can hope for, as to deny the Stormlord's will is to invite an unwinnable war. Now,
Wait, he's like so reasonable though. He's like, yeah, you know, my pride isn't nearly as important as other people's, like, you know, like the needs of other people. He's so reasonable. What the hell? Is the Stormlord kind of goated? Like, sorry, is the Silent King kind of goated? Because what is this? Like, I'm like sat here thinking like, holy shit, what?
Dynasty would be absolutely brutalized and inevitably absorbed into the Sautek legions anyways. Now, despite the vast cultural differences of many of the dynasties, there's actually a lot of trends that remain the same within their various royal courts. You see, each court is made up of a lot of different members, each with different backgrounds. There are cryptechs who are basically like court wizards. There's scientists and engineers of the Necrons that study many of the arts that were practiced by their ancestors. These disciplines include that of biomancy, plasmancy, and even chronomancy, the study of manipulating time. Now, despite their seemingly arcane nature, all of these studies of the cryptechs are scientific in origin. To the casual observer, there is little difference between a trained cryptech and a psyker. Both are able to bend the nature of reality to their whim and unleash devastation upon their enemies. Now, like all Necrons, the cryptechs are beings of the physical universe, and thus have no ability to manipulate the warp. To do so requires a connection to the immaterium, and the Necrons do not have souls, and thus, for lack of better words, are basically just engram copies of consciousness. They cannot manipulate the immaterium. It doesn't change the fact that what they are capable of is truly remarkable. A skilled cryptech can bend space and time, not to mention keep the ancient machinery of the Necrons in working order. Other members of the court include that of royal wardens, and these guys basically act like a hybrid between a lieutenant on the battlefield and a trained diplomat. And when it comes to war, they make excellent lieutenants, commanding legions of troops in the name of their king, while simultaneously being trained in the art of dialogue and politics. They are able to speak for their lord when he isn't present. And the rewards for those that demonstrate competence in enacting the will of their king are vast and great. Whether they be gifted their own tomb world or their own swath of space to rule over is something that many lords strive for. The generosity of their king knows no bounds, but so does his wrath for those that would fail him. You see, underneath the Lovecraftian horror of the Necrons is something much more earthly in nature. They are a rigid people that adhere to tradition in the strictest of terms. These are holdovers from the time of flesh, where loyalty to one's king was of incredible importance. Concepts of subterfuge and going against his orders are unbelievably taboo. It's as if the ruler of a dynasty is seen as a living god, so to go against his will is out of the question. Now this leads many nobles to having a sycophantic relationship with their lords, doing all they can to seek their favor. At the same time, a Necron king must embody the role of a living god without question. To show mercy is to display weakness to his subjects. Mercy and forgiveness are a sickness that will corrode even the strongest of dynasties. A Necron ruler must be like a wall that breaks the tides, never faltering in his goals or ambitions. And although members of his court seldom falter in their loyalty, this does not mean treachery cannot come from outside of a court. In this sense, many nobles are distrusting of outsiders from other dynasties. Now you see, the diversity of the Necrons doesn't begin and end within the confines of a dynasty, as there are various sub-factions and cults that are spread across all of Necron culture.
So you're telling me they don't just hate everyone in the universe, they also hate each other. So this like generational hatred is like all-encompassing. Oh my, I kind of love this for them though. Go off, King. Like, I wish I could hate as hard as you guys. Love you guys very much.
Now, one of which is known as the Destroyer Cult. You see, these individuals truly encompass the madness that can infect Necrons over time. Members of the Destroyer Cult have an absolute disdain for all organic life. Now, Necrons in general tend to view humans and other sentient species as unclean. Lacking the purity of the metal form makes them inherently weak and uncivilized. However, there is a vastly larger portion of Necrons that want to undo what they see as the metal curse, hoping to find a way to reverse biotransference, the process that turned them into the Necrons we know today, but we'll cover that shortly.
Right, I remember them talking about this from that Timeline by Chaz in the Infinite video. I remember them talking about this. No wonder they hate each other, shit.
It is the belief of these individuals that if they find a suitable host species and clear away all other threats, then one day they might find a way to transfer their consciousness into said species. And in this way, the Necrons could pick up where they left off 60 million years ago. They would trade away immortality for a normal life. The Destroyer Cult sees this concept as abhorrent. They wish to distance themselves from organics as much as possible, often contorting and upgrading their own bodies for the sole purpose of being better at killing. The Destroyers are death incarnate and will often purge entire worlds of every living creature, all the way down to microscopic organisms, using their god-killing weaponry to boil away oceans and scour the land. Destroyers can be found throughout Necron society, but they are often viewed as barbaric and inherently untrustworthy. Now that being said, the Destroyers are so good at doing what they do that only the most foolish and arrogant of lords would deny their usefulness. Destroyers are often taken as auxiliary forces or used as decimating shock troops, and despite how they are normally portrayed, they do have their own culture and values.
They're the ones that like don't have legs and float? Oh, I've always thought they were so funny. I do like them. I think they look very silly. They're funny little guys, and I do like them very much. I don't know if I get one, but I do think they're very, very, very funny.
What compels an individual to become a destroyer is, however, currently unknown. Now, some believe that it is a curse left over from the shattering of one of the Catan, a curse that, in reality, may just be some kind of program buried deep in their neural networks. Now, another slightly more disturbing faction of Necrons is known as the Flayed Ones. You see, Flayed Ones are viewed as diseased and twisted individuals. They are afflicted with a madness curse, known as the Flayer virus, that causes them to slowly go insane over time.
This is the one that uses like human skin, right? Oh no! Fuck! Okay, well...
Now, once afflicted with the Flayer virus, a Necron will begin to crave the taste of flesh. Now this starts small at first, the individual may take a finger or some other grisly trophy from the battlefield
No,
and consume it in
that's
secret.
scary.
Over time, the desire for meat grows stronger and stronger until the individual completely loses himself to their hunger. Now, this can take years to develop. Some notable individuals holding off their transformation for multiple decades. Others with less strong wills can lose themselves quite quickly. And here's the really sad thing about this. The Necrons are robots. They don't have mouths or any type of digestive system for that matter. So an individual afflicted with the curse can often be seen ripping and tearing into piles of bodies, trying to shove as much of the meat into their mouths as they can. But they don't have mouths. They just have a marking on their faceplate to show where a mouth once was. Viscera and gore smearing all over their bodies and dribbling down through their mechanical insides. They're like hungry ghosts, every day spent in agony, their hunger growing deeper and deeper, yet they cannot feed. Now over time, their bodies will begin to twist and mutate to better serve them as harvesters of gore. Their fingers and arms fusing together in long, thin, scythe-like blades, their spines twisting and contorting, and their limbs elongating, forcing them to permanently be hunched over, taking on the appearance of a crouching predator. The flayed ones are seen as the lowest form of life within Necron society, and the idea that any one of them could turn into such a creature is absolutely horrifying. Worst of all, they believe that this curse is contagious.
Is this just Necrons, but is this just zombies but Necrons? Is that it? Like zombification? Bro, what? Everyone's a fucking zombie now. They made the robots become zombies? That's insane. I kind of like that. But also insane. Like, it's very like 20... Yeah, I agree. It's very 28 days later. It's worse? More like psycho hunger. So like... worse than zombies, you still have your mind somewhat intact. Oh. So like, dude... Have you seen that, have you seen that one Korean, like, it's a Korean show on Netflix, it's called I think it's called Sweet Home, or like Home Sweet Home or something like that? Is it something like that? If you've seen it, there's also like a manhwa for it. But is it something like that? Robot panic attack, they need flesh because of man of breathing and can't breathe without lungs. Ah. Parasite? No, it's called Home Sweet Home. It's a Korean one. It's like zombie-ish, but all the zombies like carry like a... It's like zombie-ish, but they all carry like a form of like who they were in their lives, like, you know, something like that. But yeah, okay, I think I kind of get it. Okay, yeah, they become monsters basically. But yeah, I think I kind of get it now.
When an individual is found to be displaying symptoms of the virus, they are often banished, either being exiled from their dynasty and sent off into the void of space, or more commonly, forced to reside deep in the undercroft of their tomb worlds, long forgotten dark places where they will be forever alone, save for the company of other cursed. Now over time, the flayed ones will develop the ability to tunnel through reality, the scent of blood from distant battlefields across the stars, drawing them together. Now, Necron armies do not traditionally utilize the flayed ones in war. More often, they materialize seemingly at random at the sites of great battles that the Necrons are involved in. They rip through a portal into reality and descend on the battlefield like a wave of mechanical zombies, come to feast upon the flesh of the living. Now, it was thought for a long time that the flayed ones had no personality, that they had completely descended into madness and any semblance of who they once were had been completely lost to history. Now, part of their transformation is the losing of the ability to speak, so there was no way to actually communicate with them. However, recently we've been given a much deeper insight into them, and the reality is actually far more depressing than we originally thought. You see, in the second novel of the Twice Dead King trilogy,
I'm just saying, every time like any lore video goes, it gets more depressing. My heart like kind of sinks, but also I'm like, shit, at this point, I should be used to it by now. Everything just like gets a lot more depressing, huh? Man.
It is revealed that the flayed ones still maintain their personalities. They are not as insane as we once thought.
No!
Now they communicate through a series of taps, tapping their claws out in a binary system to communicate messages. Those who have been afflicted with the curse, no matter what stage they're in, can actually understand this, as if they were speaking the Necron's native language. Now here's the saddest part. You see, these long-forgotten individuals that have been banished from their dynasties and forced to live in the shadows actually remain some of the most loyal subjects within Necron society. The protagonist of the story, the Necron Lord Ultex, ends up having a conversation with one of his friends who has completed his transformation into a Flayed One. And without getting into spoilers, the Necron protagonist asks why the Flayed Ones continuously showed up to help them. And the Flayed One is deeply saddened by this question and asks him, "Why do you think?" He implies that despite being banished and despite his people looking upon him as a monster, he still has a deep love for his dynasty. And no matter what, he is still loyal to his king and will show up whenever he needs him. Now, whether this is true or not of all Flayed Ones or just this particular group is still left unclear. But
I have tears in my eyes now. That was so sad. That was unbelievably sad. What do you mean? Oh no. I hope wherever he is, he's happy. That's so tragic.
But it certainly gives us a new insight into the workings of a particularly mysterious group.
My people shackled the stars and broke mortality when the species you sprang from had barely left your slime pools. Our wars burned reality, and the dominion of our kings was without limit. The ground you tread on is not yours, it is ours.
So how did the Necrons get here? Who were they before they became the undead metal skeletons that we know today? Now, way back in the before times, the Necrons did not exist, but the species that would inevitably become them was known as the Necron tier. Now, this was a cursed and frail species that had the unfortunate fate of being born on an uncaring world next to a super radioactive star. Now, their planet was barren and hostile to life, and the sad truth of the matter was radiation sickness and cancers ran rampant through their society. They lived incredibly short lives, and their lifespan was filled with pain and suffering. Now, despite the overwhelming odds, the Necron tier endured. They weathered the storm that was their destiny, and through some miracle, managed to reach the spacefaring age. Now, the Necron tier knew that if they stayed on their world, their species would inevitably wither and die. As through the generations, their species' deterioration was getting worse and worse. So they built vast ships and set off in every direction, desperately trying to find a new place to live, so that their children would at least have a chance in this cold, hard galaxy that didn't care about them. Now, as luck would have it, they did encounter new worlds that were habitable, and this inspired a hope that the Necron tier had never experienced before. Here was their chance to start again, to give their people a real fighting chance. However, fate is fickle, and the curse of their homeworld followed them into the stars. Now, many generations would pass, and even though these colonizers were many light years away from their homeworld's sun, its light cast a far-reaching shadow, and the children born of these worlds still displayed signs of radiation sickness. No matter how many years passed, the new offspring's life expectancy remained the same. Just because they had escaped their world hadn't meant that they had escaped its curse.
That's so
During this time,
sad.
many new dynasties arose, and as luck would have it, they would encounter a species known as the Old Ones. And the two of them couldn't be more different from one another. The Old Ones were a race of impossible alien intelligence. They were immortal beings that lived in prosperity and were united in the goal of seeding life throughout the universe. You see, the Old Ones saw themselves as biological architects, guiding the evolution of the galaxy in the right direction. They would travel from planet to planet, placing the seeds of life upon each new world they discovered. Now, the Necron tier saw a great potential in an alliance between the two species and begged them for assistance. It was truly an example of the haves and the have-nots. The Old Ones had everything, and the Necron tier were dying. Their children were dying. Their civilization would inevitably collapse, and like a gift from the gods, suddenly the Old Ones appeared to them.
Can I just say, you guys remember how I always tell you guys propaganda works like really good on me? Like scary good on me, propaganda in particular? I'm like sat here, I'm fucking rooting for the Necrons right now. I'm like, oh my god, I want nothing but the best for them. Like, I want them to be happy, healthy. You know, I want them to be moisturized, you know, just happy. I'm getting converted right now, I'll have you know. I am not good against propaganda. This is how you know. This is how you know I'm really fucking bad, chat.
Now, they begged them to share with them their secrets of immortality. They begged them to save their children. And above all, the rigid and proud Necron tier dropped to their knees and begged the strangers for help. And in a seeming pattern of misfortune, the Old Ones refused them. Now, the Old Ones followed a code very similar to the Prime Directive in Star Trek, choosing not to interfere with the destiny of the civilizations they encountered. the Necron tier were on their own,
No.
but they wished them the best of luck. Something broke in the Necron tier that day. Here were beings capable of anything, that lived forever, that through no effort could save them, and yet they were refused. The rage and hatred the Necron tier felt for them cannot be understated, and with no thought of the seeming impossibility of such an action, the Necron tier declared war on the Old Ones.
Get
As
their
one could
asses.
expect, this would
Hell
not
yeah.
go well. The Old Ones had no desire to fight them, but would defend themselves, and they were vastly more advanced than the Necron tier. Time after time, defeat after defeat, the Necron tier were pushed back and crushed against the technological superiority of the Old Ones.
Ooh.
Now again, this was a war that the Old Ones had no time for and didn't want to be involved in the first place, and at any point would have agreed to peace. But the Necron tier were relentless in their hatred, and the festering need for vengeance was growing deeper and deeper with every defeat. Now, if any good was to have come from this for the Necron tier people, it was that the united hatred of a singular enemy brought all of the dynasties together, which before this, wars between them had been rather commonplace. Now the Necron tier were united in their goal of eradicating the Old Ones. However, this seemed like nothing more than a dream of revenge, never to be brought to fruition.
No,
That
I
was,
believe
however,
in you
until they
guys.
encountered another species, one that rivaled the Old Ones in power and would prove to be the polar opposite of them, a species with no desire to spread life, only to
Ooh.
consume it. Ancient beings that had complete mastery over physical reality,
Get their
star gods
ass.
of devastating and terrifying proportions. These entities
The
were known as
Catan.
the Catan.
The Catan.
Now, how the Necrons first made contact with them is still a mystery. Some say they were encountered by the study of stars, while others say the manifestation of the Necron tier hatred acted like a beacon to them. However it happened, their meeting would fundamentally alter the course of history and would give the Necron tier people what they were so desperate for: power
Ooh.
and immortality. One of these beings came before the Silent King and proposed an alliance. He said that they were familiar with the Old Ones, and much like the Necron tier, they also had a deep hatred for them. He spun a tale about how the Old Ones were their ancient enemies, and for the galaxy to prosper, they must be purged. The reality is that the Catan were basically star-sucking vampires,
Oh.
massive beings of pure energy that would descend upon a star and leech out all of its energy, condemning all life in its solar system to death.
Not the suck. I'm kidding. I'm sorry.
So great was the hunger of the Catan that they spread across the galaxy like a swarm of locusts, destroying all in their path. Their existence was
Damn.
antithetical to the mission of the Old Ones to bring life to the galaxy, and thus the Old Ones declared war on them, seeing their existence as nothing short of blasphemous. Needless to say, this was not the story the Silent King was told. However, this great
Oh.
lie would prove to be fitting, as that entity's name would later be known as the Deceiver. So the Necron tier would come to accept the Deceiver's offer, and thus
Right!
crafted
I
for
forgot
him
about
and
this
all the
bit.
other Catan bodies of living metal. Now this was made out of a stuff called necrodermis, which was one of the inventions of the Necron tier that they used in their starships. Now this would inevitably be used to construct the metal forms of the Necrons we know today, but we'll get to that in a minute. Now before this, the Catan were basically beings of pure energy, and with their newfound bodies, they were able to experience the physical universe on a level they never had before. Now this alliance would prove fruitful for the Necron tier as well, because the Catan gave them remarkable gifts. Now the powers of these individuals were like that of gods. They created for the Necron tier weapons and machines that they could only dream of. Invigorated by their newfound discoveries, their lust for war was once again ignited. The Necron tier were so enraptured by the power of the star gods that they actually began to worship them. And this makes sense because from the Necron tier's perspective, the Catan were their saviors. And through their power, would they deliver the wrath of the Necron tier people upon all that stood before them. The high and mighty Old Ones, who despite their self-proclaimed benevolence, condemned their people to a slow and agonizing death,
Yeah, fuck
and would
them.
soon pay for their hubris. The combined might of the Catan and the Necron tier would see their empires burn to ash, and the great legacy that they thought to craft for themselves lost to the annals of time, all records of them purged from existence, so none would remember that such a species ever even existed. Now the technology level and overall military might of the Necron tier skyrocketed practically overnight. With the power of the Catan and their immensely destructive weapons of war, all would bow before the combined might of the gods of the physical universe and their esteemed mortal followers. But the Catan had made two promises to the Necron tier people, that of power, but also of immortality. The next gift that they proposed would rid their people of their frail and sickly forms. They would be forever free from disease and suffering. The Necron tier would become gods in their own right and would build kingdoms that would never die. And all it would cost them was their souls.
Yeah, but they're also
monolithic
easy.
towering furnaces were constructed on every world that would burn away their withered frames and replace it with bodies of living metal, the same material that the Catan now inhabited. Now, the first to undergo the process of biotransference, as it would later be called, was none other than the Silent King himself. Now, he strode into the furnace, and all that he ever was burned away and replaced with undying metal. The process was a success. He felt power that no Necron tier had ever felt before.
I'm not gonna lie, the Silent King is like low-key my god. Cause like, holy shit, bro like leads by like fucking example. I kind of love this for him. Like, he is genuinely really cool. What the heck?
He was strong, vital, and his mind was operating faster than he even thought possible. But there was something deeply wrong. Something deep inside him was missing. It was like he was looking at the world from behind glass. He had newfound power and freedom, unlike anything his people had ever experienced before. But something was deeply wrong. He felt empty and hollow. The realization of what he had done and what he had committed his people to slowly dawned on him. He had no soul. He was now nothing more than an engram copy of consciousness stored on an immortal robot. This process would be repeated billions of times over on thousands of worlds. His people were plunged into the fires of biotransference, their bodies disintegrated and their souls ripped apart by the gorging feasting of the gluttonous Catan. For you see, the Catan did in fact wish to provide what they had promised. However, the energy of suns had long sensed being appealing to them, and they instead found newfound joy in feasting on a different energy altogether, the souls of the living. Now, some individuals walked into the furnace of their own free will, as it was their ruler's will to do so. Others were dragged in, kicking and screaming. It mattered not, as eventually it was done. Biotransference of the entire species had been a success. And on that day, the Necron tier died. Confined to the halls of history, another name in the vast book of extinct species. And standing amongst their ashes was only the Necrons. Now, the Deceiver had one final gift for the Silent King. For of all his desires, the mightiest was for his people to be unified. I wish that the Catan made more possible than anyone could have thought.
I believe.
As all of the Necrons had installed in them command protocols. That meant they could not physically disobey him. On one hand, the Silent King was completely horrified by this. He realized the depth of what he had done, and in doing such, he had doomed his entire species. But it is not like the Necrons to look back. A king does not make mistakes, and a king marches forward. The Silent King controlled the most powerful army the galaxy had ever seen, and this army, along with its patron gods, took to the stars and their mighty tomb ships to bring a war unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen to their ancient enemies, and the empire of the Old Ones would inevitably burn. The combined might of the immortal armies of the Necrons and their godlike powers of the Catan brought war upon the Old Ones and their kingdoms for countless millennia, eventually pushing the Old Ones nearly to complete extinction. Driven by a need for vengeance, the Necrons burned millions of worlds while the Catan feasted on the souls of the living. Countless lesser races created by the Old Ones were eradicated by the Necrons while their gods gorged on their souls, erasing them completely from existence. Now, it was at this time that two major turning points occurred. The first was that the Catan began to war with each other for dominance over their siblings. Their hubris was so great that they each thought themselves the mightiest. They turned on each other one by one until only a handful were left. Now, the Old Ones took advantage of this infighting and began to create warrior races. Now, their creations before this point were given the choice to make their own paths and develop in accordance with their own individual destinies. However, these were incredibly desperate times, and races specifically crafted for war were needed. The Old Ones created the Orcs and the Eldari, massive hulking brutes, each bearing the might of an entire army in a single individual. The ancient ancestors of the Orcs were actually known as the Krorks and stood around 13 meters tall.
Wait, hold up. I want to go back. Wait, chat, why does he low-key look like a Zaku? You know what I'm talking about? Like the Gundam, the Zaku Gundam? But also, you didn't know that like the Old Ones create the Orcs. Or I mean, I knew they created the Eldari. I didn't realize they created the... Oh no, they did, right? No, never mind. I do remember it now. Yeah. So like, Orcs are like failed, like, failed like elves or something, right? They do look like Zaku's, right? I'm not gonna lie, this is making me really want to read This is like really making me want to read the Necron books. But now I have too many books to read. And I have the attention span of a goldfish. So I don't know how this is gonna work out. You've been told this like 4 times now. Okay. I don't think you understand that I have the memory of a goldfish and I only really remember things that I really like. That's how I picked up Rogaldorn's name so quickly and everyone else was like, I barely remember you. I think it's a color scheme too. It's like, Zaku's like have like the same shade of green. So I was like, oh, this is 100% like a Zaku, right? And with the red eyes too. But yeah. Rogaldorn mentioned, I gotta mention my Kamiyoshi Rogaldorn. Infinite the Divine, it's got Chaz in it. Yeah, I really want to read the books. I also have like a terrible memory. So, you know, shit. I don't know how this is gonna work. Sometimes I do feel bad that I forget. But then also I feel like there's so much lore that I think it's okay for me to forget sometimes. Because it's like, brother, I don't even remember if I have breakfast. You know what I mean? Dude, I just bought like a book called Eisenhorn. I don't know if it's like, can I be real? So when I was like shopping, I was at this secondhand bookstore looking for like Warhammer books, right? Because, you know, they don't import that shit here. If I want to get a Warhammer book, I have to go to like secondhand bookstores to see if like anyone's like, you know, done like reading a book. So I can go buy it, right? And I stood in the secondhand bookstore with my phone out trying to Google what omnibuses are. Because I was like, I don't know what this means. But it's also very thick, so I was like, okay, googling. I was like, oh, okay, so this is like, you know, the second book in the series. So I was like, I'm not gonna buy if it's the second book. But then I bought something called Eisenhorn, and maybe we'll read that. But also, I'm not entirely sure if that's like the first book or like if it's like a book in a series or if that's like the first book in the series. You know what I mean? That's like my main issue. It's that I kind of need them to like. I kind of need like a master list of like all the books because it was very confusing googling it. I think it is the first 3 books. Is it like a series though? Because I also bought something called the oh fuck, what did I buy? What was it called? Bought a bunch of Warhammer books. One of them was Eisenhorn. We bought something called The Founding when we bought The Saint. And I know there's a 3rd book in that series that they didn't have at the store because I guess whoever was reading it, you know, hadn't sold it yet. But I'm just gonna keep an eye out for the last book in that one series. That way, at least, you know, I have it and I can, like, you know, read it. Right? An omnibus is a collection of books bound together. Oh, so it's like, okay. I think I get it then. I see. Yeah. It's the best introduction. I wanted to start from, like, the Horus Heresy. Like, the first 4 books in the Horus Heresy. I was gonna start from there. And then, like, you know, and then, like, and then read more about the Space Marines, you know? But in terms of physical books, I don't think I will be buying that many because in terms of physical books, you know, I'll just be buying whatever is available. And the rest of the books I'll be buying on like the Kindle. You know what's the craziest bit? When I was like standing there like Googling, right? I checked like Amazon and whatnot. It costs the exact same amount of money to buy the physical omnibus as it would have been to buy it on the Kindle. I was like, how is this a thing? Like, why is this even a thing? Like, why is it like cheaper-ish for me to buy it from like a secondhand bookstore? Like, damn, bro. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm gonna read it for sure.
Not to mention, it was highly likely that the Quarks had a fundamental understanding of their reality-bending powers, and were able to fully utilize them to great effect.
Ooh.
The Eldari, on the other hand, were massively powerful psychers, and each one had an innate connection to the warp. These new races would spread across the galaxy, battling and pushing back the Necrons wherever they were encountered. And as it turns out, the powers of the warp were unbelievably effective against the Catan. You see, they were gods of the physical universe, and had no link to the Immaterium. They had no ability to deny such raw and devastating psychic attacks. The combined might of the Old Ones, the Eldar, and the Quarks pushed back against the Necrons and their sinister masters. Now, this is a time period that is incredibly shrouded in mystery, and it's on a scale unlike anything we've ever seen before. Imagine a singular war that spanned the entirety of the galaxy. Now, the one that we know in the 41st millennium is a galaxy that has millions of wars happening simultaneously, but there are vast sectors of space that are seemingly peaceful, or are at least removed from the greater conflict. Now, this was a battle that raged across all of the stars. We can't even really comprehend just how immense it was, or how many unique individuals were involved. There must have been millions of heroes, each with countless war stories that could fill entire libraries. Now, the Warhammer universe has around 600 novels written so far, and this time period could probably have far more than that written about it. It was so immense that it is aptly named the War in Heaven.
The War in Heaven.
At one point during the war, the C'tan tried to push back against the psychic onslaught by creating massive pylons made of blackstone. These were constructed on hundreds, if not thousands, of worlds across the galaxy. You see, blackstone is a material that cannot be affected by warp sorcery, and thus was constructed to try to tamper the enemy's ability to channel it. These pylons were used to hold back the warp, which before this, the Sea of Souls was actually a pretty tranquil place compared to the warp that we know today in the 41st millennium. It was the absolute onslaught of souls pouring into the warp day after day, and the unbridled fury and hatred of quintillions of individuals locked in internal conflict that began to make the Sea of Souls into a roaring maelstrom. The once tranquil denizens of the warp turned into twisted monstrosities, its once peaceful tides becoming a twisted, chaotic nightmare of pain and suffering. The warp became a sick reflection of itself and came to be known as the Realm of Chaos. Unfortunately for the Old Ones, a combination of the might of the C'tan, their legions of Necron soldiers, and the dark and twisted warp manifestations that their own creations had unleashed, in the end proved to be too much for even the godlike Old Ones. As their kingdoms burned, the Old Ones disappeared from existence. Whether or not every one of them met their end during this period, or they fled our galaxy, it still remains a mystery. But the Old Ones were gone, and the Necrons had finally achieved their vengeance. But this wasn't the end of the War in Heaven, for you see, the entire time the war had been going on, the Silent King had planned his revenge on a second enemy. The C'tan had lied. They had tricked him into betraying his own people, and a king lets no slight against his subjects go unanswered. Zarek commanded the Necrons to turn on their gods, and for all their intelligence and all their power, this was something the C'tan were incapable of predicting, as they were hubris made manifest. The very concept that their subjects could rise against them was anathema to them. The Necrons harnessed weaponry of god-killing power and shattered all of the C'tan into thousands of individual fragments. Each one was then locked in a tesseract vault, so it could never again be free to roam the stars, chained forever by those who they once ruled over. The fate of the C'tan was to be eternally shackled to the war machines of the Necrons. In the far future, their essence would be used to bring devastation to distant battlefields. But for now, they would remain prisoners. Now, after this was done, the Silent King contemplated what to do next. Both of his great enemies had been utterly destroyed. However,
is that the Deceiver? All my homies hate the fucking Deceiver. Get wrecked, noob. Right, chat?
the galaxy was in turmoil. Warp-spawned monstrosities known as the Enslavers were running rampant throughout the galaxy. In addition, the Eldar had rose to prominence and were incredibly powerful. The Necrons had been solely focused on wiping out the Old Ones, and it had cost them an enormous portion of their population. In their weakened state, they had no hope of defeating the Eldari and reclaiming the stars. With this in mind, the Silent King ordered the construction of vast tomb complexes on all of their worlds that dug deep within the earth. It was there that he ordered his people to rest, to sleep for millions of years. It was the Eldar who would inherit the galaxy, and there was nothing they could do to stop this. But the Necrons know more than anyone else that time is an enemy to all but the Necrons. For their immortal forms could never truly die.
That's
and
true.
the Eldar Empire would rise and fall, just as all empires do. The Silent King set the clock to awaken 60 million years in the future, to inherit whatever was left of the galaxy. The Eldar would be long dead, and whatever new species had crawled its way out of the primordial ooze would not be ready to face the Necrons, and they would once again take their rightful place as the rulers of the galaxy. After all the Necrons were locked in stasis, the Silent King had one thing left to do to atone for his sins. He severed the command protocols. The will of the Necron people would be theirs once again, and upon their awakening, they would finally be free. After doing this, he exiled himself. He hopped in a ship and took off for the void of space. What he hoped to find out there between the stars is known only to him, but he vowed to return, to see his people as they awoke once more. It is now the 41st millennium. The alarm clock has finally gone off. One by one, the surviving tomb worlds are coming back online. Memories from 60 million years ago still fresh in the minds of the newly awoken overlords. Now, with their free will reestablished, the dynasties are no longer united in all things. But they do, however, agree on one.
Oh, yeah?
That the galaxy belongs only to them, and the verminous filth that has come to inhabit it must be completely and utterly eradicated.
Let's go. Let's fucking go.
So if you enjoyed this video, go ahead.
My fucking goats, let's go. Fuck them up, hell yeah. Wait, what? Oh, wait. Necrons versus Tyranids, who's stronger? Oh, who's stronger? Necrons versus Tyranids. Stalemate? Crons? You think it's the Crons? Wait, wouldn't Tyranids eat the Necrons? I don't think so, right? Because, like, it's not organic matter, so they wouldn't, like, you know, be all, like, munch, munch, crunch, crunch, right? Oh, that makes sense. Okay, no, that, like, absolutely makes sense. Yeah, they can't eat the Necrons, so they're like, man, shit. Okay. Oh, Tyranids will eat metal, this is confirmed. It is? They can eat them, but is it like a, they can or they just won't kind of thing? He made a video on how old is this one? Oh, this was 3 years ago. Oops, sorry guys. We watched like a 3-year-old video, my bad.